Good evening. Welcome to the Moreland City Council meeting. In recognising the cultural diversity of our great city, I'd like to pay my respects to the local Indigenous people of Moreland by acknowledging that we meet on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I offer my respects to the Wurundjeri elders, both past and present, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Members of the gallery, as you've probably noticed, this council meeting is being recorded and live streamed to council's website for the very first time this evening. This recording will also be available as video on demand, and although every care is taken to maintain privacy, gallery attendees are advised that they may be recorded, and if you are coming up to ask a question, you will be recorded. With us tonight, we have Councillor Sue Bolton, Councillor Lita Gillies, Councillor John Kavanagh, Councillor Samantha Ratnam, the Deputy Mayor Councillor Helen Davidson, myself, the Mayor Councillor Megan Hopper, Councillor Lambros Tapanos, Councillor Lenka Thompson, Councillor Rob Thompson and Councillor Oscar Yildiz. We also have a number of officers and directors, our Chief Executive Officer Narina Di Lorenzo, our Director of Corporate Services James Scott, our Director of City Infrastructure Grant Thorne, Director of Planning and Economic Development Kirsten Costa, Director of Social Development Andrew Day, our Manager of Governance Lydia Harding, and a number of members of our communications team. I'll begin with apologies. Have any councillors received any apologies this evening? No? Are there any disclosures of interest or conflict of interest that councillors wish to record? No. Could I please have a motion for the adoption of the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of March 2015? So moved Councillor Rob Thompson, seconded Councillor Davidson. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. We have a number of petitions this evening. I might move these as a group, if that's okay. We've received a petition on improving safety at T intersections in Brunswick by installing stop signs, a petition to install speed humps in Hopetoun Avenue, Brunswick West, one for safer cyclists online petition seeking parking bans on Sydney Road, Brunswick to improve bicycle safety, and one requesting permit zone parking restrictions at Luscombe Street in Brunswick. Is there a councillor who'd like to move all of those? Yep, moved Councillor Bolton, seconded Councillor Gillies. Is there any discussion of those? No? If not, I'll put them to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Are there any other petitions that members of the gallery wish to present this evening? No. Reports from committee to council. We have the Moreland Housing Matters Advisory Committee minutes and the Family and Children's Services Advisory Committee minutes. Do we want to move those together? Yep. Moved Councillor Rob Thompson, seconded Councillor Bolton. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. And now we move to question time. Question time is an opportunity for 30 minutes for citizens of Moreland to raise questions that they have with councillors. Please note that if your question relates to a matter on any of the officer reports, this is the time to raise that question with councillors. You won't have an opportunity to address questions during council's debate. A maximum of 2 questions is allowed per person. A maximum of 3 questions will be heard on any one subject. Council will then proceed to the next subject, returning to the previous subject if time allows, and we do prioritise questions that relate to the council agenda. So I'll begin with our first question, which is from Mark Finn in relation to the Milas review. Yep. If you could just come forward to the lectern, if that's okay.
Good evening, councillors, Mayor, CEO and directors. My question has been made before, but I'll just go through it quickly again. It's in relation to the Milas review, which is an agenda item tonight, and particularly how it will define the future of the small precinct at 395 to 429 Albert Street in Brunswick. As many of you will be aware, having recently completed a walk around these industrially zoned properties, they are in fact enveloped by Clifton and Gilpin Parks with very problematic interfaces. You'll also know that the industrial zoning of these properties was recognised as dysfunctional and inappropriate as long ago as 2004 by a state government appointed expert planning panel, which recommended then a mixed use zone. Council decided not to adopt that recommendation at the time, and the ensuing 10 years has fundamentally demonstrated what a mistake that was. The suitability of this precinct for a mixture of uses has since been consistently identified, most notably by the very astute Joe Connellan, previous mayors Joe Caputo and Oscar Yildiz, state members Carlo Carli and Jane Garrett, and the very esteemed former CEO Mr Peter Brown. It became very clear, particularly over the last 3 years, that this mindless review was the best avenue for change. As recent as 2 weeks ago, in a meeting with council directors and officers that was precipitated by discussions regarding a proposed skate park in the precinct, it was agreed that a mixture of commercial and residential use clearly frames the best future for this prestigious location, and that of course is contingent on securing the commercial component of any new building. It was noted, however, that there was uncertainty regarding councillor support for this zoning change, and so that brings me to my question, which is this: after such a length of time, will councillors rise above any potentially personal agendas and give your directors and your officers a clear mandate and the support they deserve to alter the zoning of these sites to allow for a mixture of use, including residential, under the current mindless review? And I finish by saying that only by doing so will you deliver to the community the safest and best place that this can be. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I guess I would answer by saying, I mean, the purpose of a review like this, which is well overdue and that council is very warmly welcoming, is just that, it is a review. So hopefully councillors won't be entering into it with any preconceived determinations about any sites, but we'll be taking this opportunity to take on board all of the feedback that we get through that review process and make a decision at the end of that. But I know that councillors are very keen and eager for this process to take place. It is well overdue, and for us to come up with a determination for sites like the one that you described. Did any other councillors want to add to that? Or? Yeah, Councillor Tapanos.
Few words. Thank you, Mark. I know the site you were referring to quite well, and you are correct, as is the Mayor, in saying that this is well overdue, this review. And it will certainly give us an opportunity to actually assess the sites, and they differ. There's some small pockets, there's some larger core areas, and there's some areas that are basically on the fringe. So we are eager to start a conversation with landowners and with the community more broadly about the best way to deal with Moreland's industrial land, and whether it needs to be converted or retained in the current zone. So there won't be one answer for all of the industrial land, of course. So we want to start that conversation, and we believe that certain areas offer a significant advantage, being close to facilities and parkland that might be able to be converted to more mixed uses and residentials. Above all, we are looking at preserving a mixture of jobs in the city. So that means that we do need to maintain a level of industrial land whilst also enabling a level of land to be rezoned for new developments and new apartments to take the housing pressure off our municipality. So I'm looking forward to this review, and I think all of the councillors and the community will be, and seeing what outcomes do come of it. But now certainly is the time for us to make those difficult decisions that you alert to.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Ross. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another question in relation to the Milus review, so I'll take that now as well. That's from Mr. Adamo Dino Pazzanetti.
Hello, my question was go.
Oh, okay.
Thank
Fantastic.
You.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The next questions relating to the agenda are in relation to Merlinston Progress Hall. The first one is from Jerry Galea.
Hi, thanks for your time. I don't really have anything written down specifically about the Merlinston Hall, but I just wanted to make point that this has been a long process and quite a frustrating process as well. I think an area we spoke with you some 4 or 5 years ago about this, and then had some meetings. And I suppose my question is around the idea of fast-tracking this as much as possible. You know, we feel like previously, to me, there's been people who are also been planning and working on this preservation of the hall, and are quite keen for the preservation of the hall, not just the use of the hall as well. So I suppose it's a bit more of a point, but also a plea or a question that we would like to do something sooner than later, because it's been such a long process, and that's where my question circles.
Great. Thanks, Jerry. No, look, certainly reading the report, it's clear that this has been a drawn-out process for residents. As a council, I know that we've had a lot of feedback in relation to the Merlinston Progress Hall. So I guess this report is enabling us to undertake the further research that we need to do in order to determine what can be done with that space. There's obviously been issues that have arisen over the last couple of years of reviewing that space, including the asbestos condition of the hall and issues like that, which we'll need to come up against while we're undertaking that review. But I do certainly take your point.
Just one last thing on that particular point is that I really feel like Merlinston's a bit of a poor cousin in relation to the rest of the suburbs around Moreland. I really feel like we're kind of left out a little bit. You know, Faulkner seems to get quite a bit of attention, so does Brunswick, but Merlinston tends to be forgotten about, and I suppose I asked you to pay a bit of attention to it. It'd be good.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that you feel that way, because I have a real soft spot for Merlinston. Well, I have a soft spot for all of the municipality, but I do love Merlinston, and it seems to be a very diverse and active community there. The Merlinston Diverse Voices Festival is very successful every year, so certainly going out and seeing that the growth and the diversity that's happening in Merlinston, I take those comments on board.
All right, thank you.
Great. Did anyone else have any?
There's a couple of questions.
Sure. We've got one from Gabrielle Castry. Hello.
Hello again. I'd like to thank Council for working with us through this process over the last few months. And I don't think I really need to give too much background to it, as this is the 3rd month that we've fronted up. I think if I just might make a comment, is that the resolution at the last meeting was to get all the information available on Progress Hall to date, and to set out the next steps to making the hall a fit-for-purpose use as a community space. And I recognise that a month is not long to get things together, so we accept that. But our assessment of it is that we don't feel that this has gone far enough in 2 ways. You give us back a business plan that we gave you, that we got no response to when we gave you 2 years ago, that we've been waiting for a response. You give us back some information that sort of says, yes, that we've met with you, but there's no notes. We have better file notes than what you have of the 2 years that Jerry and David sat in front of council workers as representatives of our group. And I think that's more of a comment, but the thing that I was really disappointed is there's no clear step to outline how to get this back to community space. And I think that there's a bit of wedge politics going on here. Our Save Merlinston campaign, in our petitions, in our advocacy to you, has been about preservation, access to multi-purpose space, and that the space is secular. It's not been about alternative spaces. It's not been about other halls. It's not been about all of a sudden what we can do in a parkland when we've had no consultation at all. But aside from that, that's out of scope. It's about Progress Hall and the preservation of the hall. We demonstrated a need. We've come back to you. We've supported that with over 500 signatures, most from our area. And we're not really too sure how else we're really to advocate for this. My question, though, is this. We were asked to incorporate and raise funds for this hall. Our response to that was to develop a business plan to outline a 4-year step of how that could look, because we saw this was a partnership program with council. But really, on reflection, is there any other residents who have wanted access back to a community space that have been asked to incorporate to raise funds for a council asset? So that's question one. Or is this just unique to Merlinston? And that even is in your attachment number 5, that is raised there in there. So that's a direct response to attachment 5. And the second question is that we feel that there's a whole lot of double speak with what actually needs to be done with the hall. And again, on attachment 5, the last paragraph, and I won't read it out, but I think just read that sentence and to ask, please, what is it about? What assessments are needed? Like, let's be transparent and clear, and we're sick of the roadblocks, and it's time for transparency. If the council does not have appetite to fund it, well, tell us and let's go back to the community and explain that, but stop mucking us around. I'm sorry, that ended up being a statement. I apologise.
There were questions in there.
But I did have 2 questions. Sorry.
No, thank you, Gabrielle. Because the incorporation of the entity was prior to my time on council, I might turn to the CEO to respond to some of that and then come back to councillors.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, I won't comment on incorporation because I'm not quite sure about that, but I was part of early talks. And I had met Jerry and David, and so in that very early time when this was really first raised and there was an appetite to look at this issue, at that time there were no actual funds allocated to do the piece of work that is about scoping. So what we were trying to do was work with the group that was now developing some really great momentum and appetite and some great skills in that group to work out what's the vision for this, because if we can get a vision pulled together, that will then start to become something that we can potentially work with the group to get some external funding in. Just recognising that there was no funding in any budgets for that. I think what's different about the report tonight, and I take all of the comments on board and I understand where you're coming from because of the kind of passion and the investment in this facility by the group. I think what is different about this report is it's a funding commitment to get the completion of the scoping. So unless you know exactly what works have to happen there, we've had some assessments, but again, that was with resources that we could pull together to do very quick assessments, not the detail that you need to lead into a potential project. This is a funding commitment that then means we can scope it properly and say, well, this is what it would cost if we were to do this. That then is a step to actually allocating money to it. So I think that's the difference between those 2 times, and really what's before council with this report is information that helps them to understand what sorts of things are needed, because there are gaps in the information, and that's absolutely true. So this is really to enable that to progress. As far as broader commentary on other options and those sorts of things, I hear what you're saying as well. I think that is probably part of the council discussion when the report gets discussed, and that is really about some clear directions for what this scoping exercise looks like. But what we're basically saying is that then can lead into the capital works program, which then means it can be funded in the next budget. That'll be before council to consider, and they've got the information they need to make that decision. So I think that's the difference between then and now. And I do recognise exactly what you're saying. That was the process, but that was what was happening at a time when there was no funding commitment sitting there. Really, you've got council considering a funding commitment now.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Bolton?
Hi, thanks for the questions. I've got a question for the Director of Infrastructure, but first I think this report would be a step forward because at least in the recommendation it makes a definite mention of Merlinston Progress Hall. But I do note that there is a little bit of a contradiction because in the report itself, not in the resolution, but in the report itself, it talks about the possibility of other community spaces. And I think what the council has heard presented by the residents is that residents want this hall, which has heritage and cultural significance to the Merlinston community, and that there is a use for this hall and that residents want a hall which is a secular space, like not just meeting in a church hall, because in a church hall there are certain sorts of activities you can have, but there's certain other activities which are in conflict with a church hall, which churches would not agree to allow their halls to be used by. So if this process was to proceed with a clear recommendation at Merlinston Progress Hall that we are investigating the refurbishment and so forth of, rather than maybe this, maybe that, then I think this would represent a step forward. But I understand, I would like to ask a question to the Director about what exactly would be covered within that $40,000. What exactly, you know, I mean, I understand that because of the short time frame, the estimations of refurbishment are a bit back of the envelope assessments, I gather, because of the short time frame. So I'd like to find out how much, what that $40,000 actually covers.
To the Director.
Through the Mayor, the $40,000 is to, as the CEO mentioned, to do a detailed investigation of the building. Some years ago there was some degree of back of the envelope estimate done to refurbish the hall. We really do need to understand it's an old building. Everyone can understand if you might renovate a house, you start pulling things apart, you find other things. The money is to investigate what is needed to bring the building up to the current standards, so council, if it decides to invest in the hall, will go into a facility with its eyes open, knowing the costs to renovate the hall.
Thanks, Grant. And Councillor Kavanagh?
Just in relation to the question regarding partnership arrangements and the former Broadmeadows Council, where we've got halls in the Northwest Ward at Jesse Morris and at Hadfield Hall, they're run by a committee of management that basically take control of the hall and all the expenses that are involved in the hall by hiring out, etc. So I think that's an example. I'm not sure whether they were involved in the actual fundraising to build the hall at that time, but certainly the maintenance, etc. is handled by the committees of management. But probably the better example is the sporting community partnerships for using our facilities there. For example, last year we had about $250,000 that we gave, and I think we got somewhere around $850,000 worth of work done by the clubs, etc., improving the facilities, Moreland's facilities. I know, for example, when Glenroy Sewer Reserve was being refurbished about 5 years ago, I know that the sporting club there raised $140,000 to contribute towards that. So it's not unusual to have that sort of community impact in trying to help fund these things.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Thank you. We have one further question in relation to the Merlinston Progress Hall, which is from Emma Cornish-Garth.
Hello. Firstly, thank you so much to everyone who's made some time to come out to Merlot and to meet with us. That's been really great. We are trying to preserve our Progress Hall. It was built in the 1920s by Merlinston residents for Merlinston residents. As the man here just said, when you decide how to invest in our hall, can you just remember your strategic plan? As part of your strategic plan, you've put very clearly that you, in number 11, to meet the outcome of number 11, the historical places of the City of Moreland continue to be enhanced. If we then use that for our families, if we use it for our community, we would meet most of the strategic planning agenda items. Our Heritage Overlay report, which recommended our Heritage Overlay, stated that the hall is of local historic, social and architectural significance for the City of Moreland, and the best way for the building to be conserved is for it to be used for the purpose in which it was intended. Our petition, which called for Council to reopen Merlinston Progress Hall, was signed by over 600 residents in a 3-week period. All of Merlinston loves this hall. It also included most of the residents, if not all of the residents, on Novian Street. We value this particular hall. So I want to thank you for acknowledging the importance of our hall, and for potentially allocating these funds for a scope. But my question is, can the scope be finalised by the first quarter of the 2016 financial year? And will Council commit to having the Capital Works project plan prepared and endorsed by the 15-16 financial year in time for the 16-17 financial year, and the restoration program begin prior to the end of this Council's tenure?
Thank you, Emma, and thank you for inviting so many of us out to Merlinston to talk with you about the community's concerns. I think the questions that you raise go to our budgeting discussions and our resourcing for the next financial year, and about whether those things are possible within the budget and the resources that we're able to allocate to this. So I think that's an ongoing council discussion around whether we do have the resources to complete it that quickly.
Yeah. I think having put so much time and effort as a community into this for so many years, seeing another lot of new councillors, not knowing our stories again, having to rework this, and as I know I've said to many of you, the first council meeting I was here with two parents sitting next to me. The first time they went to council about Progress Hall, their girls were starting prep. The first Monday here, they were starting year 7. If we don't get our Progress Hall in these budgets, these kids will be at university. This is just ridiculous. You know, you've got a great resource in Merlinston. We are a fantastic community. It's brilliant. We are hardworking. We will use this. We want this. And it's not just the few of us you keep seeing. It's the people walking down the street saying, what are you doing with this Progress Hall? It's the people on the Facebook page. It's people offering, can I help? What can I do? Can I babysit your kids while you do this? Please, can you really consider that the Moreland City Council does, in my mind, have an obligation to our heritage buildings and also to the community of Merlinston. Thank you.
Councillor Yildiz.
Emma, the last time there were a number of people from the Merlinston Hall here, and I mentioned the same thing. You guys are probably lobbying us the best you can possibly lobby us, and we're listening to you, and we've had discussions amongst ourselves as well. So we're on your side on this. It's finding the money this time round to ensure that it does in fact happen. And I agree. 6 years ago, I met with you guys. We then met again 4 years after that. 2 years after that, and we're still here today discussing the same thing. So I think we've had a change of CEO, and how many more CEOs do we have to change until we get something done? So we're hearing you loud and clear. I think most of the councillors here would agree with you. For those that haven't gone, I'd love for you to go and have a look, because...
everyone's welcome. There's always a good cup of tea in Merlot.
No, it's a great community, but you know what? You deserve this.
We do deserve it.
You do deserve it.
Actually, we do.
I think we need to get on with it, and we are. We're listening to you, and the way you guys have lobbied, can I just say, and I've seen these faces so many times at council, good on you, because it is this strong lobbying that's probably, I guess, you've got a good response from us, but it's also allowed, I think, a lot of other people within the municipality to listen to what you've got to say. So,
I'd love us to be giving our time to something bigger for our community and the people of our community, not a hall. I think it's time to move on. Thank you.
We've got a few answers for you, Emma. Councillor Kavanagh.
Can I just make the point, just want to make the point that yes, this has been a long process, but the people who are involved are the people around the table here, not the officers. In other words, we endorse the budget, the councillors do, not the officers. So the fact there hasn't been money in the budget is the fault of the councillors, both the people around the table here and the previous councillors as well. Right? That's really important, because, can I say, except for the last 3 months, I haven't heard one councillor, not one councillor, advocate on behalf of Merlinston Hall. Right? When it's budget time. That's the time when it really counts, and you're doing that. No, that's not your fault. That's not the officer's fault. That's the fault of the people around the table here and the people who occupied that, including myself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Bolton?
Well, actually, this was raised at the time of the last budget, but anyway, that aside, there was a question that Emma asked about, can the scope be finished in time for the 15-16 financial year? And
I think she asked in the first quarter.
First quarter.
15-16.
First quarter. Yeah. So I think that would be good to get a sense from the director. And then, just as a point of information, the budget the draft budget goes out to community consultation on the 27th of April, and then there's a submission process, and then it's finally adopted in June. So that's the time frame for the decision making about getting money into the budget for this. And also, just going back to the issue of the community group being asked to incorporate and raise funds, I mean, I certainly don't think, even if that might have been the practice of the previous Broadmeadows Council, I don't think we should have the expectation, there might be community groups that want to do that, but I don't think we should have the expectation that community groups, that there's always going to be a community group in a position to, or with the desire to play that role to defend a council resource. So I don't think we should try and justify it. It might have been something that arose in a previous council or whatever, but I certainly don't think we should maintain that expectation in this current process. But would like to hear from the Director the possibility of the time frame.
Through the Mayor, I suppose until the final 15-16 budget's adopted, we'll then work out our work plan for them, but we do recognise the need to undertake this work so it can inform the 16-17 budget. But at this stage, I can't commit.
Thank you, Grant. Councillor Tapanos.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and councillors. Look, as we've heard quite often tonight, the Progress Hall is on our heritage register, and I was on the council that made that decision to place it on the register. And we did so recognising the value, the heritage value and the amenity value that it added to the Merri-bek neighbourhood. It is very disappointing that council has not been able to undertake these preliminary works between the first conversation 6 years ago and now, so we could actually be funding in this budget the works needed to actually repair the hall and make it available within the next financial year. That is disappointing. And I still question whether such a large sum of $40,000 is required to work out what you want to do with such a small hall. And perhaps that what we ought to be doing this budget is putting in significant amounts of money to not just only be doing the workings out of what needs to occur there, but also be actually repairing the hall and making it available. So the budget is coming up, and the council will release its draft budget at the end of the month, and residents have an opportunity to put in submissions. So I urge you to put in a submission calling for a significant allocation to actually analyse, scope, but also repair and construct, reconstruct Merlinston Hall. And I think that's what's required, and I would be a councillor, but very willing to support that and make sure that enough funds are in the budget in the next financial year, because there's always delays. So if we aim to get it in the next one, we can guarantee that we do deliver it before the end of this council's term.
Council, yes. Yeah.
Can I just ask a question to the CEO who was director at the time? With your hand on your heart, how many meetings did we have back in 2010-11 about the Progress Hall, and how many meetings did we have with you guys in the Mayor's office talking about it, and we raised it at budget time, but we were never able to find the money? I want you to answer that question, because you were the director at the time. Did you ever hear at budget time us discussing anything about Merlinston Hall? Because I think there was.
I think...
I'm asking a question to the...
I will take a brief question, but I will remind councillors this is an opportunity to answer questions from the gallery, and we will have an opportunity for debate on the items later in the agenda. But I'm happy.
You've asked me hand on my heart. Hand on my heart, I've had probably maybe 4 or 5 meetings with members of the group in trying to work up what the possible vision might be, and again trying to work out how to do this and how to pull funds together and potentially get other funding sources excited to work with us. Of course, I left after that point, and I know that there had been some further work after that, so I can't give you a complete picture. So what I tell you is not going to be complete. I can tell you what I was involved in. I don't recall any actual a specific budget bid, specific sort of scoping of what this would take to actually start pulling a study together. I don't recall that, but I do recall those meetings, and the problem is I will give you a very incomplete picture because I saw part of that. So I'm sorry, it's not going to give you a complete answer.
but it's taken 6 years for us to get to this stage. Okay.
And I guess in closing this off, as councillors who are new to this discussion, as opposed to the previous council, I think that this report has been very informative, and it's clear from what is in this report the amount of time and effort that has been put in by residents who live in Merlinston, but also the fact that the game has shifted, I guess, in the time, and so initial estimates of what we expected the reconstruction to cost have possibly all doubled because of the asbestos issues.
Well, the asbestos is only quite small in the report, really. There was far more asbestos in every other house in Merlinston.
But from reading into it, they couldn't really check parts of it because of access issues, and then there's the heritage aspects of it, which have also added to the cost. So I think that it's shifted a little bit over that time, as well as...
So let's get on to it. So in 20 years, it's not even more money. Yeah.
Thank you, Emma. We'll move on to questions outside of the agenda. We have a number on Blurt Maroop College. I'll take the first one from Dorothy Bamblett.
Move an extension of 2 minutes.
I was going to do that in 5 minutes.
Good evening, councillors. My name's Dorothy Bamblett. I would like to acknowledge my Aboriginal elders here today and one sitting out in the foyer who refused to come in. But that's another question. I speak to you tonight in regards to the BMC College, which is located on 208 Hilton Street, Glenroy. I was one of the first students to attend the Aboriginal school, code school there. Been involved ever since. I was school council president for a number of years through the process from VCOC through Development College. Strongly stood proudly with the whole protest that's went over a couple of years. I am a mother of 9 children, so I was very passionate, and excuse me if I get emotional when I'm speaking about it. It was a long process with the campaign of the protesting, as you may know, and it's a great honour for me to stand here tonight and to thank you guys for your contribution of money that has been handed and supported in regards to purchasing the site. My question to you tonight would be, would the council be prepared to, in partnership, put in an application to the Indigenous Land Council to further construct that land, and to also, this is to let you know that this is a step towards closing the gap for a lot of Aboriginal communities in Moreland and also in Hume. I'm not a Moreland resident, I am a Hume resident. Been a Hume resident for most of my life, and growing up and living and working in Moreland and, vice versa. Again, walking down Sydney Road, I don't see anything specific towards Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We are the First Nations on the land. So taking this step forward with you guys would be a great opportunity in closing the gap, and working with you to contribute to accessing that site would increase, a lot of cultural aspects, families, education, community services towards, the Aboriginal community, and definitely for my children who are, the next generation to come. So,
great. Thank you for the question, and thank you for sharing your story and your experience at that site. Look, as you are aware, Council has made a resolution. We are in support of seeing that site continue to be used for Indigenous purposes and for community purposes. We resolved to authorise the CEO to negotiate a purchase up to $4.9 million. Since then, the valuation of the property has come back possibly in excess of $6 million and as high as $8 million for longer settlement terms. So it's not what we expected. The estimated cost for upgrading the existing buildings is also in excess of $1 million. But look, I know that our CEO has been in discussions with representatives of the community and is continuing those discussions around how we can engage possibly other partners to continue to see this site used. So if you'd like to add to that.
Just through the Mayor, so some just further sort of information on that. I think there had been a discussion Tuesday morning, actually, the discussion out on site, which I think has led to a general business item that will be about working out what other methods we can use to secure this site.
Yep.
And that will just include a whole range of things, including potentially looking at other funding partners. We are starting to look at the Land Trust at the moment after that meeting, so we're starting to do a bit of research to understand what could be possible, and also continuing to have conversations with the relevant department, so we'll keep that contact up.
Yep.
So I think the issue here is to try and do this on a multiple number of fronts, because we're not quite sure. We don't have complete control of the situation, but we need to scope lots of different ways to try and secure this. So I think what the GBI, the General Business Item, is calling for will then mean we can report back and provide some more information on what we can possibly do.
Yep, great. Thank you.
Thank you. There's another question on Merri-bek from Barbara Williams.
My question was just, can council update the community on the acquisition of 6 acres and 208 Hilton Street at the Koori Indigenous School site, closed in 2012, unfinished business?
So through the Mayor, similar to before, so we have been trying to negotiate. We've got a resolution on the books that gives us the direction to negotiate within that $4.9 million. We have been negotiating and trying to secure the property. We have had we've basically heard that they're seeking more than that, but we are still continuing to try and negotiate that with them. We're continuing those discussions. What we're now also trying to do is work out what other ways can we secure it. So we don't actually have we're not at the point where we're able to sign a purchase or any of those sorts of things, because we don't have, we haven't got agreement on a price, and we haven't been able to get it within that, range. We are going to keep working on that, but in the meantime, if we can find other ways, that will help us. So that's what we're up to.
Councillor Bolton, did you want to add?
Yes, I just wanted to maybe add something, or else another question. The members of the Ballot Working Group and I met with the local member for Pascoe Vale, Lizzie Blanthorne, this afternoon, of which she indicated her support for a community hub on the site. And then she sort of indicated that her questionings with the Education Department was that the Education Department did want to engage, pass the land over to the council, that government departments hadn't expressed interest in it, and that there was going to be a meeting between the Education Department and Moreland Council today. That's what she told us, but I thought maybe there might have been a property services.
It might have been at officer. Okay. So just through the Mayor, I actually, at officer level, there's conversations happen at officer level. It hasn't happened at our level, and that's continuing to try and work out what can be done. That's what I was saying before. We are continuing to talk to the department to work out, well, are there other ways we can do this? So I'll get briefed on the outcomes of that discussion, then we'll escalate and we'll work out what we can do further with the department. But it hasn't happened with senior officers. It's been some officers speaking between the department and council, and those things happen. They happen in the process of doing this.
We had one further question on Merri-bek, which was from Mariella Tavira, who also had a question on ATC Cook precinct. So if you wanted to ask both of them at once.
First off, I'd like to thank all of our councillors tonight and our executives from Moreland. A little bit of background on myself. I've been a resident for Moreland for the past 15 years. My question in regards to the whole precinct, I'll give you a little bit of a background. So I'm an advisory executive for BMC Working Group. I've been working with BMC since the closure of the school, and prior to that I was one of the first students back in late 95. Also had younger brothers attending that school. In the process of BMC being closed down, we did lose 3 young children affiliated to the BMC school, which is I'm pretty sure people are familiar with. The accident on Pascoe Vale Road 3 years ago, just after the closure of the school. I'm sorry if I feel a bit emotional on this. Apologies in advance. So after losing this property, I have actually incorporated and started a sporting club for disadvantaged youth just at the rear of BMC's property. So over there we engage in disadvantaged youth through sport and back into education, exactly what we're developing at Merri-bek. Now, my question today is that is Council prepared to do a master plan for the whole of the Glenroy precinct, which would be within the Cook BMC's property, Cook Reserve, Glenroy Tennis Club, the Bowls area, combining that for an open space for the whole of the community of Moreland and the residents. On our books now, we have over 187 young disadvantaged youth using that area now. It would be such an advantage for our community in Moreland to actually have BMC's property as well. So my question is, would Council be prepared to make a master plan for the whole of Glenroy precinct, which would be BMC site, Cook Oval, tennis club, netball facilities, bowling club and the open space? And also, is Council prepared to fund for the plan as well?
Okay. Thank you for the question. It's certainly a proposal that we can consider. At the moment, there's no plans for such a plan, so it's something that we would need to consider in conjunction with all of the existing works that we have taking place in Glenroy, including the old Glenroy school site, which we're working on. I'm happy to turn to other councillors if they want to provide a response. Yeah, Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Mariella, for the question. This proposal for a precinct plan involving not only the Merri-bek College site but also the ATC Cook Reserve hasn't come to council before. But I personally think it's a fantastic proposal because you would sort of integrate all of the parts of an Aboriginal community hub. Some open space for the local residents and that whole sporting precinct and the links between the reserve and the community hub. Because I think, when the school closed, there was no educational pathway put forward for the young people who were at the school. And I think that did contribute to the fact that we had that really terrible car crash involving 6 young Aboriginal people, young Aboriginal teenagers, and I think that was quite devastating for the community. So I certainly think this is a proposal that council should look at, but it would have to go through a formal process of being put up to council.
Yeah, Councillor Ratnam.
Thank you, Mariella, and to Barbara and to Dorothy for your questions beforehand. And I think Councillor Bolton has gone some way into answering and responding to the question about the master plan. I think it is a question that we should take on notice, and I'd like us to do that to provide a response in some ways. So if we could get your details and ensure that we can communicate back with you, because I think it is an idea worth seeding and exploring further. Just in response to the broader issue that's been raised tonight about the progress of securing the Merri-bek College site, a number of issues have been canvassed already, and there is a general business item that Councillor Bolton is going to be proposing later to progress that even further. But just some general comments. Firstly, a thank you to all the members of the working group who came to the last Reconciliation Advisory Committee meeting. That was really worthwhile for the existing committee members to understand the issues more deeply, and I think you've got a really deep commitment from that committee to work alongside the Merri-bek College working group to advance as quickly as possible to the best success that we can reach. The issue that's really pressing for me at the moment is that we have actually the context within which that we're deciding this now has changed quite a bit given the election results and the change of government at the state level. When we started these discussions on my time of council, I know this has preceded a number of us on council. It's been going for many years with little bits of progress being made. But over the last year and a half, we started making a lot more progress and we were gaining some momentum. However, reading the conditions of that political climate of the previous government, we knew some of the boundaries there. There were they were not going to consider leasing that land to us. They wanted to sell it and essentially, gain control of those funds. I think we've got a real opportunity here with the change of government to really advocate for a much better outcome, an outcome where council and perhaps the state government can work in partnership. I'm not sure what that looks like, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that we have to fund the whole thing. I'd be very, supportive of doing that. However, thinking through all the options, the state government owns this land. It's not in private hands at the moment. It is in the government's hands. They have control. They have the power not to sell the land, and they have the power to lease it to us, perhaps for a peppercorn lease. And I don't want us to throw away that opportunity to advocate really vigorously and loudly about what their responsibility in this is as well. And we have shared responsibilities over a number of areas, and I believe this is a core one. So I hope that as a council, we take up that opportunity, as with as much strength and effort as we possibly can, and open that dialogue and make it a public dialogue with the state government about what responsibility they will take for ensuring this land is able to be used for community use and reopened once again. So, I commit to doing as much as I can on that front, and I hope as a council group we can do that going forward.
My second question would be, it's not in regards to the BMC site, it's in regards to Cook Reserve, Ashcourt Car Park. That area is known for hooning. So we run our sporting facilities out of Cook Reserve and Glenroy Tennis Club. Now, we had an incident. I have reported it to council in planning previously 2 months back, and I haven't heard anything. Now, last Monday, we nearly lost a 3-year-old child who stepped in front of a car that was doing burnouts. Now, at present, there is no sort of speed. There is nothing there that, and I know, regardless, we're still going to have hooning wherever we go, but there's no sort of safety mechanism at all within that car park when you go in there. Now, our facilities, we step straight into the car park, which means there's not even a concrete barrier, there's not even just a paint on the concrete to say, listen, there's going to be children. I had 60 members, 26 kids when I did the measurements 9 metres away from the first burnout mark. That's a close. So my question is for this, is council willing to do something about this car park for the safety of the residents of Moreland? And not only for my sporting club, you've got the football, cricket, bowls, the residents of the area, the safety. What does it take till we lose a life for these hoons to stop? I'm constantly on the phone to the police. So is council willing to put something to plan and help us out with the safety for our residents of Moreland?
Thank you. Councillor Gillies?
Thank you for that. We have a number of spots in Glenroy that are really dangerous. I'm actually bringing a motion up tonight about another area near the station that's a terrible danger. But I would be more than happy for council to be working on this as an urgent matter to remedy some things. We probably will need to do that in partnership with the police as well. But in terms of, I think we need to look where we can find money to actually react straight away.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Bolton?
After Mariella rang me after this incident happened, I've sent through an email, but infrastructure might not have had a chance to look through it yet. But some suggestions would be some speed humps in the car park, and possible some sort of bollards at the entrance to the car park to slow vehicles down. And I missed the deadline for general business items on this issue. So, but I mean, it might be something which is already being looked for. There might have been other complaints to infrastructure about this particular car park. I'm not quite sure yet.
Certainly. I'm happy to seek a response from the Director as to whether we have had previous complaints in relation to this car park.
Through the Mayor, off the top of my head, I'm not aware of whether we have or haven't had other complaints. It is a large open area car park with no restrictions in it, so it is probably attractive for that sort of hoon activity. We do have the email from Councillor Bolton of last Wednesday, which has been generated into a CRS, and that will be responded to as well. So that has your name attached to it as well. So you'll be contacted as part of resolving that CRS.
Okay. So apologies that we have taken a while to respond to that, but it sounds like it is being dealt with, which is promising. And I mean, yeah, with hoon driving, there are certainly some measures that we can investigate putting in place, but it is also a behavioural issue that we may need to pursue with the police as well. Yes, Councillor Gillies.
Can we just grab a time frame from Mr Thorne?
Through the Mayor, the transport area received 425 CRSs in the month of March. This one's obviously in April, but there is a large workload within that area. It will be processed along with the others. I can't give you a time frame.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't think that's good enough.
Thank you,
Understanding
Councillor.
workload, but
Okay. Okay, our next question. Oh, we have exceeded the 30 minutes allocated to question time. Does a councillor wish to move to extend?
Could we extend for the questions that have been submitted?
Yes, certainly. Moved Councillor Kavanagh, seconded Councillor Gillies. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. The next question is from Beverly Griffith in relation to the Merri-bek Childcare Centre. Okay. In that case, the next question is from Mary Rispoli in relation to the Merri-bek Childcare Centre.
Can I get Dean to speak first?
I've got, yeah.
Okay, it's from Dean Dorr in relation to the Merri-bek Childcare Centre. Somebody asked me a question about Merri-bek Childcare Centre.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Dean. Bit of background. I've lived in Moreland for 12, 13 years opposite the Merri-bek site. On the corner, we live in a very leafy street. It was a beautiful, attractive area. That's what brought us to Moreland. And of recent times, there has been submitted plans to extend the childcare centre. The childcare centre is council owned, and at present, I think it can take 45 children, and it's going to be doubled in size to 90 plus children. The area is heritage overlay. We also have parking restrictions opposite. It's in our court, Bateman Court. It's a no-through thoroughfare where a part of the no-standing zone exists. At present, we've sought to put in submissions against the proposal. Not that we're against the extension, but basically how the extension is being put onto land of one. It has a heritage overlay within the area. It's a flood zone, which in, I think it was 2003, the bottom of the court became a river. We had 103 millimetres of rain in about 2 hours, which created havoc in the area. It did damage to houses, council property, Merri-bek. It undermined the senior citizens building, which was almost demolished. The new building is actually going to be put onto the flood zone and close the gap of where the existing old river is underground in pipes. At the time of the flood, we had over 2 metres of water rushing through that area, and that's what caused destruction, pushed houses back 1 metre. So we have had quite a volume of water come through. My question to the council relates to how the council can put a building of industrial size on land that's zoned for housing and also on a flood zone where residents in our street who have partners with disabilities took over 2 years to put a front ramp onto their building, where the council owns of some monstrosity significance can be passed. And I find it very, very difficult as a resident in the area to accept that it can be passed so easily without considerable consultation with the direct community.
Okay. Thank you. Look, I am aware from our council financial report that at the moment the appointment of a tenderer for that site is on hold due to ongoing planning, Melbourne Water consultations and issues around those concerns that you have raised. There is a significant need for childcare in Coburg, and that is a need that council is quite keen to see addressed within the space that we do have available at the Merri-bek Centre, and expanding on its ability to accommodate more children, but we have put the tender on hold while we continue to investigate some of those concerns that you've mentioned this evening. I'm happy to refer to a director for further information. Or
through the Mayor summarised, I suppose, where the current project's at. It has a number of concerns which we're either trying to work through or resolve, but until we get to that point, the project, from a tender point of view, is on hold.
Sure. So the question was around how is the council able to submit their own plans and accept the plans on property which is residential?
okay. Oh, from a zoning perspective.
From a zoning perspective.
Yes, the Director of Planning.
Through the Mayor, thank you. Just to clarify, with the residential zone, there are a number of uses that are also permitted aside from dwellings. So they're called a Section 2 use, and childcare centres are one of those sorts of uses. So a permit can be sought for that use within a residential zone. The other things that council will be considering in making a decision about the development is obviously the land subject to inundation overlay, which is on the property. That's not there to prevent development, but it is there to make sure that whatever development happens does not impede flows of water. And that's what we have to work with Melbourne Water very closely to make sure that how we're designing it responds to that. And the heritage overlay is also something that has to be taken into consideration as a precinct. While this building itself is not necessarily part of heritage significance itself, it does have to respond to the character of that heritage area. So all those things will be taken into account when council makes a decision. Certainly from councils, whenever we apply for a permit on our own land, we do have to advertise it extensively. And we're going through that process at the moment. Council has called that application to the Urban Planning Committee for a decision.
Yes.
So that's all subject to all that framework.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Mary? Oh, okay.
Oh, I wasn't quite prepared. Good evening. I was mainly came today to explain what the proposed extension to Merri-bek would have on the residents of Bateman Court. I feel as though we have been overlooked in how it would actually impact us. The plans themselves we don't even exist on the plans, whereas Connolly Avenue does, but the south side of Bateman Court isn't even depicted in it. What will happen for us, and I was reading some of the strategic plans about planning that non-residential uses in residential areas should have minimal impact on the residents. I don't think you could come up with a plan that would have more impact on us. It is such a huge imposition on where we are. We're on a slope, it is going to be huge, it is going to take up the whole line of vision, a grassy slope, and 6 trees will come out, and in its place I will get a rubbish dump to look at, where opposite my house will be the bin store. So I've been asked to swap a leafy green, really pleasant environment for a fence, which is now sort of pool fencing so the water could go through in the next flood, and the bin store. So you can understand that it is not an acceptable proposal to me, and if councils generally does not want to have wants to have minimal impact on the residents, I cannot see how anybody could look at this plan and go, oh yeah, that's fine. So I don't know that there's not only that aspect to the plan at present, all the, I'd say, interface with the childcare centre comes off Connolly Avenue. That is all going to be shifted to a court, a small narrow court where you cannot park 2 cars and get through.
So, Beverly, thank you for your question. I'm looking at some of the emails that I've exchanged with you and Mary in the past, and so I know we have had a number of discussions in relation to your concerns around this planning application. As a result of those email exchange, as I've advised previously, I've asked that this matter be called to Urban Planning Committee, which is what the Director of Planning has indicated. So rather than putting your concerns this evening in this forum, which is certainly taken on board by councillors, you will actually have an opportunity to appear before Urban Planning Committee when this matter is discussed further to put your concerns in that forum. In the meantime, your concerns in relation to the floodplain and those issues with Melbourne Water are being investigated further, which is why the tender has been put on hold in the interim. So.
Only because this will have such a huge impact on where we live, and we live there, and it's not, you know.
Oh, I understand. And as I indicated,
that's why we're here. That's why we got the impression that people didn't actually fully understand.
Okay. Because I'm looking at the email that I sent to you in response to your concerns a couple of months ago, and as I indicated in that email, at the time when we undertook consultation with the community and put the letters into letterboxes indicating that we wanted to undertake work at the Merri-bek Centre, there were a few positive comments to the staff at the centre and no formal correspondence or negative comments in response.
I don't think anybody had any idea.
Sorry?
I don't think.
Well, I've got here Merri-bek Centre staff, in conjunction with Council's Children's Services staff and with input from City Infrastructure, had done some community consultation in relation to the proposed project last year. I attached a letter in the email that I sent you earlier this year, which was letter dropped to all of the neighbours in Bateman Court in September 2013 by the Children's Centre to inform them of the development.
I think there was a letter.
I can re-forward that to you if you'd like.
There was a letter which talked of a renovation. Yes, the building is very decrepit looking. A renovation, I suppose, we took on board as being cleaning up the building.
Right.
Not doubling the size and yes.
Yeah, and
destroying
so I guess what officers took away from that at the time was that more extensive consultation wasn't deemed necessary because the project didn't propose a change in the use of the site and it wasn't considered contentious from a broad community perspective, but certainly as a result of the numerous email exchanges I've had with yourself and Mary, we've taken on board that there is concern within the community, and so that's why that further consultation is now taking place.
I also realise that we're probably on the back foot in that childcare is a big issue, and
absolutely,
are we
and
then going to be disadvantaged because childcare?
I think we've probably answered your question at this time, and you will have the opportunity to put a submission at the Urban Planning Committee that discusses this. So thank you. Mary, did you have anything further to add to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi everyone, this is my first time, so be kind. Now, I guess my question is that some of the houses are already on flood zones in our street. We are a small street. We are 10, we got like 6 houses, I think, or 8 houses, and then we've got a little bit. So obviously in some time the council has approved for these houses to be built on a flood zone. And now we're also saying that can we build an extension of a well-needed childcare centre? We know we need childcare centres, we're all for it. But we're saying, should you build it on a flood zone? And how can council keep making that same error to build on a flood zone and then it getting flood, then spending a lot of money to pay for it? So my question is, yes, we really want childcare, but I've got a 92-year-old man who stood here in council, he's not here tonight, and said that he didn't want the childcare centre there because in future it would need expansion and this was not the appropriate site for expansion. So I ask you all, and this is not just about communicating, this is about letting everyone know what is going on at this site. It's not about childcare, it's putting children on a flood zone. This is my major concern. So my question is, how can council continue to authorise buildings to be put on a flood zone?
Okay, so since the last major, and I have indicated this previously, but since the last major flooding, which took place in 2003, Melbourne Water has undertaken drainage works in that area, and there have been multiple major rain events since they undertook those drainage works without a repeat of the 2003 flooding outcome. Having said that, we've certainly noted your concerns around the floodplain, which is why the tender has been put on hold and we're undertaking further discussions with Melbourne Water in relation to those concerns.
I think you better, because I know for a fact, I've spoken to Melbourne Water and I've got it in writing, and I know you believe that, Megan, that there has been upgrades, but there is no such upgrades in that area at all. So I'd just like you maybe to have a look into that a bit further, because there are no upgrades in that area whatsoever. There has been no changes, and I can tell you and I can guarantee you that whether it's 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, there will be a flood there, and the council, the ratepayers' money, will have to put all that money back into rebuilding it, let alone if there's any loss of life of a child or a baby. Okay? There has not been any water change in it. They have not had any drainage work at all. Okay, and I can guarantee you that.
Okay, well, as I say, that's not the advice I've received, but I'm happy to take that on board. And as I say, we are undertaking further discussions, so we can include that in the discussions for clarification.
I think I've got my clarification. You may need the clarification. I think everyone here knows that, and even Melbourne Water.
Okay.
And let me
we've
just say,
answered your question, so thank you. We'll move on to the next question now.
Gee, thanks a lot.
The next question is from Con Maritopoulos in relation to Pentridge Boulevard. Hello.
Could I get the question?
Yes, certainly. That's okay.
How's everyone today, all right?
Going well.
Good? That's good. Yeah, so basically just here to follow up on what I've been trying to get done for the last 7 months. Considering the Merliston people, I've got about 4 years and 5 months to go, but we'll get there. Look, I suppose I want to say thanks for a couple of people who got back to me. That's Philip Priest. He had a good conversation with me about where he's getting to. A bit disappointed with the councillors, except Sue. I'm voting for you, Sue. She acknowledged my email, and she's from my ward, so at least she said she's received the email and looked at it. I didn't get any response from anyone else. Disappointed about that, because you guys represent us, so take the time to answer the emails. If you can't, just say, look, I've got it. I don't have the time. You may have an answer in a month or whatever, but that's your job, I think, because that's what we vote you in for. So that's that part. I suppose I did hear some lawnmowers, which was good, and some rubbish is gone, but still stuck on this soil contamination. I don't know what's in it. You guys know it's contaminated. you've told me it's contaminated. All the reports say it's contaminated. There was actually a car there from another consulting company, which you guys must have given a notice to those owners to get their land checked. Poor guy's probably got contaminated soil on there and he's going to have to deal with it, being dumped there illegally, I'm imagining, somehow. But I suppose my two questions are, can Council provide an update on the progress of the works or proposed works for the clean-up of the unsightly properties and potentially contaminated soil issues along Pentridge Boulevard? For example, has an environmental assessment been undertaken to determine the level of contamination present? So, meaning you guys know about it, so what have you done about it, basically, on that front?
Thanks, Con. I know the directors have been working on this issue very closely, so I'll turn to the Director of Planning to respond.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. Thank you. You have had some extensive conversations with Phil since the last meeting. There is a joint effort between our planning enforcement team and also the local laws team on this matter. So we're coming at it at two fronts in terms of responding and getting a response immediately to securing the sites to prevent access to them. The local laws team have been helping up with the rubbish and removing that, so that's been at that level. As you're aware, the stockpiles have been there some time. We are aware that some of those piles do have some contamination. To what extent of risk there is around that, we're working with the EPA to understand that. They have the level of expertise to actually follow up on specifically testing that soil and giving us assistance in how we should manage that with the landowners. But immediately we've requested them to respond to the fact that they should have applied for a planning permit through the department at the state level because they're the responsible authority, which they didn't do. We understood it would have been part of the construction management plan where the department was issuing the permits for things happening on the site, and they were managing that, moving the stockpiles as they were developing it. That didn't occur. So now we've specifically sent enforcement action requiring them to lodge those permits. We've also let the department know as the responsible authority that we've requested that action as well.
To whom have you lodged that, sorry?
To the department. We've also let them know as the responsible authority that we've taken that action with the landowners and to expect an application to come to them to assess, to handle this. Through that application process, then we've got powers to start to ask for specific information around soil testing, putting permit conditions about how the site can be further managed as well. So there's a whole lot of action that can happen through that process.
I was just under the understanding that the last meeting that no one had any money to do any testing or get rid of any soil, and that was Council's issue in getting rid of the soil. So,
the landowners themselves, that is their responsibility to do that. It's not a responsibility of Council to do anything with that soil as such, but there's certainly the management of it and the need to put conditions on landowners to manage it in a certain way is Council working with the department.
Yeah, but someone's done something illegal. Are they doing anything about that?
And that's where the planning enforcement action is now being taken against them for failure to apply for the permits to do it, to manage the land in that way. Okay,
which brings me to my second question, which again is on you guys. Council confirmed some of the soils are contaminated in the last month's meeting. In light of this knowledge, why have there been no measures implemented to prevent the public entering and being exposed to contaminated soils or informing them of contamination in the area? So we'll know about it. There's no fences. Anyone can go in there. I took my motorbike in there actually, just went for a ride in there, just to demonstrate that I can go in there and do whatever I like, because apparently if there's no fence, I can enter any property and do whatever I like. So
entering a property that's private is actually illegal, even if there is not a fence, so I wouldn't necessarily be claiming that. But in terms of preventing that access, that's certainly the action that we're now asking the owners to take. Certainly where there's stockpiles of soil, we've been very specific about timber hoardings like you would normally see on a construction site. Where there's level land, that's when wire mesh fencing can be used as a normal construction site as well. So that's the action that Council's taken, and they've got a month to action that. And if they don't, then we escalate that process through the relevant processes.
Right. Okay. Yep. Great.
Thank you. Thanks, Carl. The next question is from Simon Krieger in relation to car and bike parking and vehicle access.
Good evening, thanks for your time. Yes, my inquiry or question, is regarding a recent change of planning policy, in particular
driveway access?
Sorry?
Driveway access?
Car and bike parking and vehicle access, yes, 22.03 of the Moreland Planning Scheme. I currently had 2 planning applications in with the planning department for approximately, in one case, 9, maybe 10 months. In another case, maybe a little more, 8 or 9 months. And was at one stage told your application is currently being signed off with management. You should receive a planning permit within the next week for both applications. That occurred. Got a surprising phone call the week after telling me the great news that the driveway policy had changed. End of January, will need to refuse your planning application, or you may apply for an amendment, go through the same process again, 6 to 9 months of waiting, time and money for my clients, and that was for my 2 applications. I could imagine how many other architectural designers and draftspeople out there have how many applications. I'm relatively small in business. There's some companies that may have up to 30, 40 applications in there that may have been struck with this one. Okay, in putting questions to you, why, with a change of policy so significant to the design of a planning application, was there not a transitional time period for current applications allowed? And part 2 of my question is, can one be implemented to this policy that has just happened or occurred?
Thank you for the question. The Chair of Urban Planning Committee and myself actually had a briefing on this matter yesterday, so I'm familiar with the concern and I know that it has affected a number of applications. The address that you've applied for a development on, is that the address that you've listed on your question sheet, or is it a different address?
No, sorry, I thought you were asking.
The reason I ask is because we looked at 5 specific properties in our briefing who had raised concerns around the application. So if you're able to give us, as an aside, the address of the application that you're referring to, we're probably familiar with it.
Okay.
In relation to your comments, because the change to the planning law has now been implemented, it's something that planning officers have to enforce. Now, our officers are going back and reviewing those 5 who have raised concerns about the new policy and sort of seeing how they apply. But because it has been implemented, we have to enforce it. The reason, it's hard to explain, the reason that the crossovers need to be applied in this manner is consistency with the rest of the block. So,
I understand the policy and I understand and in a way agree with the policy. However, my question is and was, why wasn't a transitional time period applied to it
with
for
policies
applications?
At this level, we don't normally apply a transition period, is my understanding. So, I mean, I'm happy for the director to give
Can we though?
Sorry?
Can we, you say we don't usually, but can we?
I'll go to the director first.
Through the Mayor, in terms of transition periods for planning scheme amendments, they are generally actually only relating to statewide changes like new residential zones.
Sure.
And when it's part of the capture of some of the applications in this situation, they were lodged in June in a rush to get in before the new residential zones. And a lot of people would really want exactly this policy right now where we don't have a transition period. But generally it doesn't apply to council amendments. It generally only applies to changes within the Act and the regulations. And with new residential zones, it's one where there is a transition period that's been applied through the state. So you don't see it at the local level.
Yep.
So they are introduced and they're given immediate effect. So there's not a transition period. Part of the issue with this particular, the MSS or the Municipal Strategic Statement and the local policies, which this is one of them that was approved, we actually, Council approved that in, I'm trying to remember, I think it was June 24, no, not June, it was earlier. I've got my dates, March 2014, with the previous state government. That government didn't make a decision on it. It was the current minister that made a decision in January this year. If that previous minister had approved that when council submitted it, that policy would have been placed before your application was even
The
lodged.
application was made in May 2014.
So this was in March. It should have been approved by the former minister, and it wasn't.
Yes. However,
so
I can only.
With all of that uncertainty,
Yes.
it makes it very difficult for anyone to explain to people when the controls will or won't come in when ministers make
Of
decisions
course,
not to approve
understand
them.
that.
So what we did in this instance, as soon as it came into effect, we looked at the 600 live applications that we have. There were approximately 100 that could have been affected by it. So we wrote to each of those applicants and let them know that this policy change had happened. And since we've done that, most applicants have responded by changing their designs to suit. Obviously, we've got currently 5 where those design changes are more problematic. But part of the reason council introduced this change was to reduce the loss of on-street parking in streets where multi-dwellings are proposed, to make sure the front yards actually have more open space, so we don't have 2 crossovers, we only got the 1, and there's more space for trees. So it's actually delivering the outcome that council wants, and it was part of the extensive consultation.
Agree with, and I totally agree with and understand the policy. However, as an architectural designer, I've designed to comply with the policy 8 months ago. All of a sudden I'm told, you're getting your permit next week, go and stand by your letterbox, and I get a call the week after saying we'll need to refuse because we've changed policy.
It's something we can take away on notice. We've certainly received your concern. Now that you say that it's something that you submitted in May last year, I know which application you're referring to, and so does the chair of UPC. So we're discussing with the director how we can address these particular applications that have been caught up in it, and whether, for example, it's a matter that Urban Planning Committee can be asked to consider these applications. But I'm happy to take it. I'm just conscious that we have been doing question time for an hour and a half, and so where a question's been answered, I don't know if we need to answer it more than once.
Okay, I was just going to take a couple of comments.
Okay.
I certainly haven't spoken as much as yourself, Chair, on these questions. But look, I hear what you're saying, and sometimes planning laws do change, and we've heard the director say that some planning laws change and you get an interim period, and you'll certainly, any applications before the change do not take effect and they're determined on the old rules, and then some others the rules are different again. And it seems to me that you've been fairly disadvantaged by the fact that you have applied the current planning laws at the time of application, and in my view that is what should apply. Now I know the law probably doesn't say that at the moment, but I believe that the best way to work through this is to work with council officers and see if there can be any alterations, and if not, I am a member of the Urban Planning Committee. You can certainly contact myself or any of the other members of the Urban Planning Committee and request that it be brought up.
If I were able to amend these plans and these applications to comply with the new policy, I wouldn't be here tonight.
Sure. Well, if you email us, I'll be happy to call it up and make sure that the Urban Planning Committee does review and make a determination on the decision. So officers do follow policy. but I guess the Urban Planning Committee has a little bit more, can be a little bit more lenient and can grant permits where officers can't. So I'm happy to have your application and other applications as such brought up and to be addressed by that committee. And there's, I believe, 5 councillors on that committee that would be making then that decision, and that's probably the best way to go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will remind councillors of the guidelines for question time. They state that the Mayor shall nominate the appropriate councillor or council officer to answer the question or elect to answer it him or herself. So if councillors feel that I've been spending too much time answering questions, then it's as per the guidelines for public question time. The next question is from Michael Petit from the Moreland Community for Action on Transport.
Thank you. You've gone late. I'm going to cede my time to a colleague.
Who doesn't have a cold?
I would just like to say I've got a cold. I just want to commend this council. If it hadn't been for Moreland Council, the East-West Link would have been built. There were lots of times in this history of this. I've worked for Yarra and Moreland to work against this, as did all of MCAT. If you hadn't gone to the Supreme Court, Labor would not have had a reason to change its position. I know there's lots of reasons why they factored that in, but this council deserves the applause it should get for a job well done, and we can put that $8 billion to work on public transport and real roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity, Mayor, councillors. About 18 months ago, a group of people who didn't know each other got together and we became the Moreland Community Against the Tunnel. And we worked pretty hard, and like Michael has said, one of the reasons we're here tonight is to thank the council sincerely for supporting and working and stopping the tunnel. It seems that the tunnel concept, the road, has almost been buried, not quite. We think it's dead, but not quite buried. So Moreland Community Against the Tunnel have decided that we will continue working. We're very passionate and group who believe in sustainable transport. So we're keeping our initials. We're still going to be MCAT, but we're become known as Moreland Community for Action on Transport. We have quite a few aims, which I'll be very, very brief. We want to reduce dependence on cars and promote public and active transport and general well-being to achieve less congestion, safer paths for pedestrians and cyclists, urban development including housing development that supports public and active transport, and the preservation of existing parks and gardens and heritage listed spaces. What was I going to say? So that's basically our mandate, and we would like to keep working on that. The other thing, I need to ask a question, and the question I have for the council is, I hope I haven't lost it here, what are Moreland Council's priorities for advancing public transport in 2015? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm happy to open that to councillors on the floor. We have a number of policies in place, but yeah, Councillor Bolton.
Well, I think the first one is something which the Mayor has already actually made a statement in the Moreland Leader about, and that is trying to make sure that the state government doesn't cut the frequency of trams on the Sydney Road and Lygon Street tram routes, and in fact actually should be going further to increase the frequency in the daytime and the nighttime. So yeah, that, I mean, there might be other things that people want to raise, but that immediately rings alarm bells, because we need to be increasing public transport all over Moreland, and you know, buses, interconnecting buses as well as trams, and increasing frequency of the trains on the Upfield line, because if the service isn't there, people can't use it and will use a car or steal a car or something or other. So, you know, you have to find some other way. And you know, the streets are becoming clogged. I mean, there's other things about cycling and so forth, but I think public transport with an extra 30,000 people coming to Moreland means we need improved public transport.
Thank you.
Great. Yes, the CEO.
Just through the Mayor. So Moreland, this council has adopted a whole range of strategies addressing exactly the sorts of things that you've talked about. There's an overarching strategy, which is the Moreland Integrated Transport Strategy. It is absolutely targeted at a range of different transport modes and reducing car dependency and basically building up these other modes of transport that are really viable alternatives that can move our populace around in more efficient ways. What's sit underneath that are a range of sort of more detailed plans. So the bike strategy that was adopted not long after that, which I think council's almost more than halfway through its short-term actions and has really worked hard on developing that network. There's the pedestrian strategy that's been adopted as well. So a whole range of sort of plans that then enact that vision of this whole transport network working well. Public transport is a core part of that network, and what that means for council is advocating very hard to the state government for improved services, and you know that strategy has helped direct over the years the sorts of advocacy that council's done. Anytime there's a group that is willing to work closely with council to help move that forward, that's always really valuable because it is about getting broader state government interest and investment in public transport solutions, and I think this has been a very active council in that space. So I think there's a lot of work that can be done together.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And the final question is from George Kangia in relation to the Indigenous Social Justice Association and the Warriors of the Aboriginal Resistance.
Hi, thanks for hearing my question. So I'm from the Indigenous Social Justice Association, which is based in just on Sydney Road. I'm from Preston, but it's on Sydney Road, and we're holding at the Brunswick Town Hall on the 18th of April, which is a Saturday night, a panel with Lex Watton, who's a person from Palm Island who has been campaigning against Aboriginal deaths in custody after Cameron Doomadgee was killed by Sergeant Hurley up there. And he's coming down to do a panel about how to sort of try and reduce Aboriginal deaths in custody and Indigenous incarceration rates and so forth. So thanks for giving us the use of the hall. We're a very small community group, with basically zero funding, or what we managed to raise, as well as the Warriors of the Aboriginal Resistance are similar. And so I'm here to ask if you could waive the requirement for a security guard. It's going to be a very low-key sort of evening with a panel. There'll probably be about 100 people there or something like that. And the requirement for a security guard makes these kind of events, it adds quite a significant hurdle to get a officially certified security guard there.
Okay, thank you. It sounds like a fascinating panel that you're putting on. I know that there is a notice of motion in our agenda this evening to consider waiving the security guard. So that's something that just needs to come to council for us to determine that. But look, certainly thank you for putting your case forward this evening, and that's something that we'll consider when that notice of motion is discussed later this evening.
Thanks.
Thank you. That concludes question time, so we'll now move back to the rest of the agenda.
5 minutes break.
Yeah. Oh, yes. So moved Councillor Bolton, seconded Councillor Gillies. All those in favour?
Oh, sorry.
All those against?
Smile.
1, 2, 3. I will declare that carried. We're just going to take a 5-minute adjournment. And so we'll be returning, let's say 8:45.